If you just plan out a year, what ends up happening is there's a lot of micro decisions that you end up focusing on. But when you have a vision that's 5 to 10 years out, you have to focus on macro decisions in order to get there. Because 5 to 10 years out, the revenue numbers are higher, your profit numbers are higher, your team is going to be larger. You're going to have a lot more separation between departments, but also a lot more integration in the way in which they have to communicate with each other. So activity is going to be different fundamentally as you are building on your way up. And so if you don't put it far enough out, oftentimes you can't get there. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. I'm Allison Williams, your host. And on today's episode, we are going further into our 4-part series about mission, vision, and values in a law firm. What they are, why you need them, and how to create them. So in our very first episode of this series, we talked about all 3 of them together, how they're different, how they overlap with each other, and why you need to have them. In our second episode, we actually went through the step-by-step process for you to create a mission statement. Remember, your mission statement is your why. Okay, so super important that you have that as your guiding star, as your connective tissue within the firm. That's kind of the way we like to think about that. Okay. But today, we're going to be talking about the vision. Now, for a lot of founders, this is the part that actually gets them a little anxious. Because when you talk about the mission, it becomes very formulaic, right? We gave you a step-by-step process to actually create your mission statement. And for most people, they can do that reasonably well. Tightening it up, step 5, in the process of creating a mission statement can be a little taxing, can be a little tricky. Because sometimes you don't want to be too flowery. You don't want to use language that sounds like you pull it out of a textbook. You really want it to be emblematic of who you are, how your firm is, etc. And so sometimes choosing the right language can be a challenge, but that's the reason why you create your mission statement, you put it aside, and then you come back to it and you test it with multiple people. The vision, on the other hand, is much harder for most founders, we have found, because a lot of founders will think about where they want to go, but they're in so much of the day-to-day. Even if they are removed from the day-to-day, they are so much in the problem solving and the orchestration of activity within their law firms in the day-to-day that they don't really get to stop and think far enough out that the vision becomes clear to them. So we actually have to go through somewhat of a workshop to actually create for them a process by which we help them to get a vision launched and start using it in their law firms. So remember earlier when we were going through the mission, vision, and values, that was in episode number 1, we were actually talking about the vision as the picture. And the vision becomes the way in which we create emotional connectivity with our future, right? It is the future status of the firm far enough out that we can get really excited about it, right? It is the future state of the firm and what it looks like, okay? So I want you to think about it this way. Your goal in creating a vision statement is to create a vivid picture of what your firm looks like when it achieves its purpose, okay? So the mission is ultimately what you are trying to do. The vision is the proof of the mission, okay? The vision is when we see the firm, when we talk about the firm, when people describe the firm, how do we know that we have accomplished our mission? We know that because the vision of the firm is so clear, is so concrete, is so succinct, and so easily identifiable. All right. So there's lots of steps to this process as well. It's another 5-step formula. But before we go into the 5-step formula, I just want to thank those of you who are checking us out on YouTube. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for checking us out. You can always get more information about the podcast by subscribing to the channel. And I'd like to know if you actually get value out of this particular video. So it's great if you could give us a like on this video. That does help us on the algorithm. And of course, share this information with any law firm owner that you know who desires to grow their revenues, to crush chaos in business, and to make more money. All right. So now let's dig into the 5-step process of creating a vision in your law firm. And the first thing you're going to do is ensure the future is 5 to 10 years ahead. Now, This is one of those challenging parts. This is usually where a lot of law firm owners get stuck because a lot of us, again, we are so in the day-to-day. We are problem solvers by nature. And when you start thinking far enough out, 5 to 10 years out, it becomes really hard for a lot of people to even fathom what that means, right? To think about what kind of problems are you going to have then? And for most law firm owners, the real challenge is that you can't see yourself outside of the role that you currently occupy. So I have a lot of law firm owners, when they come to Law Firm Mentor, they say, I really want to be out of the day-to-day of practicing law. I want to just own the firm. I just want to be a visionary. I just want to be a CEO. I don't want to be going to court. I don't want to be selling prospective clients. I don't want to have my schedule dictated by court systems. I find it so restrictive. And now I just want to be a CEO, right? And absolutely no choice, no wrong in that. Just as there's no wrong in the lawyers who say, I love being a lawyer and I want to spend most of my time lawyering and I really don't desire to be a CEO, right? That's absolutely your choice as well. But for those that want to get out of the day-to-day, oftentimes they are so in the day-to-day that they can't see their way out. They don't think it's possible. They don't think there's ever a way that they could have a team that is as qualified and capable or more qualified and capable than they are. So they think my clients are never going to get the greatest service or the greatest outcome unless it's me walking into that courtroom. And that is true. If that's what you believe, that is true, at least true for you. So you have to first allow yourself to believe that it is possible for you to have something beyond yourself. And you have to put it far enough out that you can actually create from here to there. If you just plan out a year, what ends up happening is there's a lot of micro decisions that you end up focusing on. But when you have a vision that's 5 to 10 years out, you have to focus on macro decisions in order to get there, right? Because 5 to 10 years out, the revenue numbers are higher. Hopefully your profit numbers are higher. Your team is going to be larger. Your activity is going to be multiplicity. You're going to have a lot more integration between departments. You're going to have a lot more separation between departments, but also a lot more integration in the way in which they have to communicate with each other. So the activity is going to be different fundamentally as you are building on your way up. And so if you don't put it far enough out, oftentimes you can't get there because especially when you start getting into the multi-million dollars, right? Especially when you get to like the $3 to $5 million range, it becomes very easy to get stuck in that area for a host of reasons, right? We've talked about this before on the podcast where one of the major problems is the labor efficiency rate. A strategy and a component of business that's actually very well defined in a book by Greg Crabtree, who is a CFO based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And his book, Simple Numbers, Big Profits, really lays that out, that at some point you get to a size where you need more management support than is producing revenue. And as a result, your margins start to shrink. And there's some strategies in that book around how to avoid that. I am a big fan of that book. I think it's actually very well written, very clear. But I'm noting it because when we start talking about going further out, a lot of times when you have your margins start to shrink as you start adding more institutional and infrastructural support, when you start building out your C-suite, that is when a lot of folks get stuck and they say, I can't see out further past 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, whatever it is, right? So then it becomes a real challenge. And the only way people are able to get there is by starting out far enough that you can actually build the pillars around it. So I want you to think about what success looks like in 5 to 10 years out, right? Think beyond your revenue. I want you to think about the impact that you're making. Think about your firm's reputation, right? Right now, you might have a regional reputation. Maybe you want a national reputation, right? Your team culture. Right now, it might be very individualistic. Maybe you want to start building teams and having people work in teams so that they are rowing together and not just focus on themselves, right? Maybe you want the client experience to be one that's different than how it is now, right? The client experience is not just, do your clients choose to pay their bills? Do your clients choose to recommend you? But it is, how would your clients describe how you made them feel in the process of receiving your service? And by the way, we talk a lot on this podcast about AI. The more that AI takes over and tasks can be more easily done through a machine as opposed to a person, the more the way that a person makes another person feel and how people interact with each other when they're going through the distress of legal representation, the more important that skill is going to become and the more differentiated you're going to be if you master that. So thinking about your client experience now is not just a matter of doing well in business. It's going to be essential to staying in business, especially as AI in its evolution and revolution is taking over in many critical ways. All right. Step number 2. Okay, we've talked about how you're going to envision your future 5 to 10 years out. That is step 1. Step 2 is you want to describe measurable outcomes. Okay, measurable outcomes. Now, when we talk about this, I want to put this in the framework of how we are going to know that the vision has come into fruition. Again, we're talking beyond revenue. It's easy to play with numbers, right? If you're currently a $2 million law firm, it's easy to say, in 5 years, I want to be a $10 million law firm, right? You can reverse engineer the math. How are you making money through your lawyers? How many lawyers will you need to have on team? And how many leads will you need to feed those lawyers in order to be able to achieve $10 million in revenue? That part is actually pretty easily formulaic, mathematical, etc. But when you start describing the outcomes, you move beyond that and you start getting to the vision taking form, right? So things like market leadership, right? Where do you rank relative to other firms that will be the size that you will be in 5 to 10 years? Where are you in your category, right? Your community reach, who are you touching? How are you known? How are you seen in your community? Are you a voice for a particular group of people, a particular method, a particular political ideology? How significantly rooted is your voice, the firm voice, relative to other people who are speaking in your space? And then your client outcomes, right? How are people thinking about your client outcomes, right? Not just are you able to deliver the legal service, but when you deliver the legal service, what is the likelihood of a client getting what they want? How do they see you relative to their desired outcome of achieving something that they want? Whatever it is, whether it is, I was able to get a large insurance settlement from your firm as a result of how you handled my personal injury case, or I was able to not just protect my business, but I was able to see different ways of legacy building through thinking through my IP rights as a result of how you advised me. Right? The outcome takes on a life of its own. So you want them to be measurable, right? Is it a win-loss rate? Is it a certain number of contracts closed in the course of a year? Is it a certain number of real estate transactions achieved in the course of a year? Is it a certain number of divorces in the course of a year? Is it a certain number of commercial transactions that happen in the course of a year? Where is that quantified, right? And then where are you ranking in that delivery of service relative to others in your market? All right. Number 3. So we've talked about, this is our steps to create a vision statement. We've talked about ensuring that you're looking 5 to 10 years out, and we've talked about describing measurable outcomes. Step number 3 is you want to include emotional aspiration. Okay. Emotional aspiration is, what is the thing that is beyond your reach, beyond your wildest dreams, that you can put into the vision of where you will be? So in other words, this is really important that you allow yourself to dream out loud. Okay. And by dream out loud, what I mean by that is a lot of folks have a hard time putting a vision on paper because they fear that if they write it down and they don't achieve it, they will look bad. Okay. Now, I say that very matter-of-factly. I know a lot of people struggle with that. I'm not in any way criticizing you if you struggle with that, right? We've talked a lot about Maslow's hierarchy of needs on this podcast. And one of the things that we all have as a core need is a need for security, right? That is keeping us with the herd. So we all have, to some degree, a desire to be liked, a desire to be valued, a desire to be respected, and to not be laughed at and to not be scorned. And that is deeply rooted So recognizing that that is a part of the human experience. In fact, some people are so triggered even by the thought of that. If I say you have a need to be liked, it's like you could just say that, I shot your mama or I, I kicked your puppy or whatever, right? A whole lot of folks can't even admit that to themselves. But if you really stop in your silent moments and think about it, how often does that dominate your decision-making process? How often do you stop yourself from putting yourself on certain stages, from speaking boldly something that you desire because you don't want other people to judge it and judge you harshly? That is very much a part of this process. In fact, the scary part of creating a vision for most founders is this part of the process, right? Putting something big and scary out there, recognizing that as soon as you put it out there, now you're going to have an obligation to go get it. And that's the great thing about this. The vision statement actually is the most powerful of our three: mission, vision, and values, for that reason. Because when we put it out there, we're now inspired to go get it. So I want you to think about how people will feel when they interact with your firm. Are people inspired by your firm? Do they look at your firm and say, that's a leader, right? That's someone, or, a group of someone's that I aspire to be, right? We are the best. We dominate the market. We lead relative to our competitors. We set the tone. We are the change makers, right? What is it about your firm that people will look to and say, wow? And that wow factor has to be a wow to you, which means that you first have to think about where you are, and then you have to think so far ahead of where you are. This goes back to step number 1, that 5 to 10 years out. So far ahead of where you are that you can't even envision yourself there right now. But when you do envision yourself there in the exercise of creating a vision statement, it scares you. You need to be scared by how big and how amazing you're going to be in the future. And if you're not, that emotional aspiration piece has not been fulfilled. Okay. So think about it from the perspective of you, but then also from the perspective of the other. All right. Step number 4 in creating a vision statement. Step number 4 is that you want to make it time-bound, but timeless in spirit. Okay. So this is an important piece, especially because of what I mentioned earlier about AI. For a lot of us, we don't think far enough out, because for a lot of us, we start overthinking what 5 to 10 years out is going to look like in terms of our world. And especially if you are somebody who is centered in all of the changes that have happened, right? We are at the state of human development changing at a far more rapid rate than in our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, our great-grandparents' generation. Once upon a time, a major shift was from a desktop computer to a laptop computer. Now, the changes are happening at the rate of lightning, right? So when AI was first introduced, the models that were being built, there was a projection that in 18 to 24 months, they would be able to release a new and updated version. Well, we have seen over the course of just this last year that there are now 6 or 7 different iterations of the same model that started at the beginning of the year, right? Because the open language models are learning humans at a far greater rate than was even contemplated. Now, there's a lot to be scared of with that. We're not going to have that conversation. One thing I will say, I will do a great nod to one of my favorite podcasts, Diary of a CEO, hosted by Stephen Bartlett. He has a lot of folks in the AI space, in the tech space, talking about both the benefits and the dangers of AI. But I will say that one of the things that I've learned from actually following a lot of those experts that he has interviewed on his show is the fact that now, because we are learning at such a rapid rate, it is very hard for people who are overthinkers to actually conceptualize what they will be, what their roles will be like, what their positions will be like, riding the wave into the future, because the future is so definitively different, even 5 years out at this point, that most people can't envision it. Which means I don't want you to create your vision anchored to the ways of today. You have to be open to the possibility that technology and that the way in which humans interact with technology and interact with each other as a result of technology is going to change us and change our society in a way that is so dramatic that we probably can't envision all of the steps in the how-to. I mean, who could have even envisioned that now we would all walk around with a little computer, right? My cell phone is my Bible for being, just like it is for most people, right? We have it by our beds. We have it on our person at all times, right? It's one of those things like losing your wedding ring, far less scary than losing your cell phone, because it has all of your life and all of its component parts there and at the ready for you. When you think about that, you think about the fact that you couldn't have imagined that when the good old Commodore computer was in existence and was this big, clunky, yellowish thing. You never thought we could carry that around. And now we all carry it around. We carry it around with far more power and far more use than we ever thought before. The important part of that is that when you start thinking about how your future is going to look, putting too many of the stalwart components of today into the future makes it almost nonsensical, right? Because you don't know truly what that's going to look like. But it doesn't mean that you don't still have big picture aspirations of what it looks like, and you allow yourself to refine it as the world refines, right? Just as you update your business plan, hopefully you're updating your business plan, right? You're a member of Law Firm Mentor, you're updating your business plan on a regular basis. But if you're not, and you have a business plan, you absolutely should be updating it regularly. Similarly, your vision might need to be updated, right? Because your vision does, we are somewhat limited. I hate to use the word limited, but we are somewhat constrained by being human. And so we visualize things based on what we understand words and language to mean. And thus, as we are seeing things into the future, our thoughts around it are going to be anchored with what we know that to be. And that is just not realistic if we are to create a vision that is timeless. So I want you to think about, again, feeling states are much more important here than intellectual states. And I want you to also think about the idea that it is going to evolve, but that's okay, right? Allow it to evolve, but don't allow the fact that it will evolve to stop you from creating it in the first place. All right. Step number 5 of creating a vision statement. Okay, we have talked about the steps so far to be the envisioning of your future 5 to 10 years out, describing measurable outcomes, including emotional aspiration. And this is really that exciting thing that scares you a little bit about the future, making it time bound, but also timeless. Okay. And then now step number 5. Step number 5 is to refine it into a concise, future-oriented paragraph. Okay. Now remember, your mission statement was just that, a sentence. It was a statement. Your vision is a paragraph. It is going to be very descriptive. It is going to include a lot of touch points about feeling states, both how you feel and how others feel about your firm. And it is going to be really talking about the outcomes that you're going to bring into the creation process, right? And what you are going to create in your law firm. So here's an example. Within the next decade, we will redefine the client experience in estate planning, turning fear and confusion into empowerment and calm as we help people build amazing legacies and protect their families from the tragedy of distress when a family dies without the protections of wills and trusts, right? You are bringing in that statement, the time, right? So within the next decade, you're talking about your practice area, generally estate planning, and you're talking about what you're going to do, how you're going to transform. And again, this is really designed to get people thinking about the things that are exciting about being in your company, and in particular, what you are trying to have created once you have ultimately achieved the mission that you have for your firm. Now, of course, your mission is going to be ongoing. So even after that 5 to 10 year period that you have created to time bar your vision, your mission will continue on. But your mission may ultimately evolve. less likely, but your mission may ultimately evolve, especially if you decide to go into different areas of business and decide to add different practice areas, right? The world is your oyster in creating a law firm, but your vision is really something that is going to evoke very strong passion and emotion in people when they say, yeah, once we get there, right, in that decade, here's what we're going to be on the other side of where we are now. And that is something that we really need to celebrate. All right, everyone, you are listening to the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast. On today's episode, we went through our third in a series of mission, vision, and values in law firm. And we talked today about how to create your vision statement step by step. If you haven't already, go back and check out our first episode, which kind of talks about what a mission statement, vision statement, and value statement are, how they are different, how they work with each other in a law firm, why you need them. And our video number 2 was all about the mission statement. Today, we have been talking about the vision statement. And next up, we are going to talk about your values in your law firm. So thank you for tuning into our series. I am Allison Williams, host of the Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor podcast, and I will see you on our next episode.